Well, we'll wait for everybody to kind of join in, just like we do normally on this particular type of live stream. As we start getting people on here, we'll start discussing the topic for the day. If you're watching this after the live stream went live, you're actually just watching it like a video, then this is like an intro. Today we're talking about handle material choices and design choices. Now, as we start getting people on here, I'll probably reiterate that a couple of times, but we'll see how it goes. I know that people are still getting used to the whole live stream thing, and this is one of those things where you get to interact with me. It's kind of interesting that the video or the live stream already has three reactions, but only one person watching it. So that's pretty cool. One person reacted to this video a lot. There we go. There's 6 people. So as we go on with this particular live stream, I'm going to be showing y'all a few different things. I'm going to show y'all some handle materials. I'm going to go over reasons why I choose certain things, plus good decision-making processes when it comes to designing your handle or thinking about what materials you're going to use, things like that in different builds. I'm going to show y'all a few knives that I've made and explain some of the choices within those builds, things like that. Like all the other live streams, remember, y'all can interact with me. Feel free to ask questions, make comments, do everything you want to do. The best part about live streams is me being able to interact with you and actually kind of go into some detail on a few different things. So make sure you're commenting. Hey, what's up, Marl? Okay, John. There you go. So the cool thing, John, is again, you can watch this video at any time. So thank you for being here for part of this. But yeah, whenever you gotta go do your thing, you can always come back and watch the rest of this later. The cool thing about the live streams is they tend to be a little bit longer format. And what's nice about that is you can kind of come in anytime you need to, rewatch different parts of it, and get whatever education you need out of it for that particular thing. What's up, Brian? How you doing? Joining the old live stream, huh? So I'm really excited about doing the live streams like this because I think that it's just a really cool part of YouTube, and it gives us the ability to actually do that more one-on-one conversation rather than just the video and then me, answer comments and stuff like that after the fact. You can kind of help tailor this particular discussion. Now, what I'm going to be talking about again is handle materials and choices for just what materials should go with what knives, and of course a lot of this is just my opinion on it. There are certain people who do different things when it comes to their handle choices. We're going to go over why I choose to do liners on certain particular builds or different things like that, and kind of go over what my decision-making process is for what handle would go on what knife. Y'all know that I kind of talk about things like that. What's up, Matt? How you doing? Chasing kids? Yeah, I was doing that earlier. Okay, so we're going to start this off with a couple of builds, okay? So that I've had to think through handle choice-wise. One of them being one of my favorite knives that I've done, this guy right here, that has a few different handle materials, and a lot of people wouldn't have probably thought to put this handle material with this antler or this guy right here, this Mocha Magane piece that's on the front here. Not a lot of people would have thought about putting all those together, but this is actually one of my favorite knives that I've made with the materials and everything like that I really, really like. And it was thinking through what pieces I wanted to go with it and trying to line it out. Let's see here. John says, I'm surprised I made a set of wood carving knife using cherry, stored about 4 years. Yeah. See, I love using materials that I got from the past, and I'm going to talk about a couple of those in this stream here. So when it comes down to picking handle choices, I like to think of color contrast. I want something that stands out. I want things to really look striking. Part of that plays with me being a YouTuber and having to think through thumbnails, because you have a little bit of a different thing that happens whenever you go, okay, this knife really needs to grasp attention, but it also needs to be subtle and work within your aesthetics of making knives. Especially if you're going to be this person who sells them on your website, you want to make sure that that knife stands out and is striking, because you need people to click on your website, look at that picture and go, dang, that is badass. I want that. It helps within selling your knives, you know, but you don't want to go too crazy with it to where it just doesn't make sense, but you do want it to be striking, and you want it to catch people's attention so that they can go ahead and purchase some of your stuff. I'm going to discuss wheelbarrow handle. I'll be talking about that and this one. So, yeah, and it does make really good scales. The wheelbarrow handle that I use, I'll be talking about that whenever we get into the handle material portion of this. And Pinto, first of all, Mr. Otis here, I've already got a knife that I'm making for you, because you already made me a knife that I absolutely love, and I'm going to be making one for you so we can trade off the next time we meet up. So when it comes to different handle choices and trying to figure out what you're going to do, a lot of the times colors come into play. As you get more into the knife making scene, you're going to realize that there's a lot more options for different things that you can utilize and make. So whenever you first start making knives, a lot of the stuff that you're going to use is going to be the slabs that you can get off of, and by slabs I mean things like, you know, scales, things like this. You're going to be using pieces that you can get from wherever makes sense. You're going to be doing Maker's Material Supply, Etsy maybe. You know, you can get pieces like this right here, this jigged kind of bone or antler material. You can get stuff like that. You're going to be using a lot of slab scales because those are things you can order, again, off of Amazon, stuff like that. And a lot of them are going to be just your wood tones. When you use wooden handle scales, I'm going to talk about that in just a minute. So when I use handle, like the liners and things like that. So a lot of times whenever you first start making knives, you're going to use a lot of woods. You're going to use a whole lot of wood tones that are just natural tones, and you're going to get maybe some burls and things like that, but a lot of them are going to be more simple wood tones, and they're going to use liners. So that's perfectly fine. Whenever you start getting into knife making and you start really looking into pieces of wood and things that you want to collect to be able to actually make really cool knives, you're going to start getting into stuff like this. You're going to start finding those really cool pieces for specific builds that just have like flames built into them. This is natural wood that's just been dyed and stabilized. These beautiful blues. You're going to be looking into things like this, and you're going to be cutting them down. You might even find some beautiful emerald like this right here. So whenever you start getting into knife making and you start building a lot of custom knives, you're going to start looking into other tones and colors and things like that. And the way that I look at a lot of my knives is how that stuff's going to transition from my blade finish into my actual handle. So like whenever I do things like this right here, sometimes I'll put all the funky stuff towards the handle, and sometimes I'll put it towards the back. But I know that whenever I profile certain things, where's the eye going to go to? And when you're holding this knife, it's going to go to here, that area. All the main part is just held in your hand. So whenever you're holding it, all the cool stuff is going to be at the back, because you're actually going to see that. And all the simple stuff can flow into this nice little tone that I have going on in my bolster ricasso area. Remember, this is the one that we just got done forging. That whole entire area right there is all hand forged, which is one of my proud little moments right there. But stuff like that right there, it's all about how it transitions from one section into the other, and I like to think that stuff through. Now, other ones that we're going to have liners and stuff like that with, and having to think through what materials I'm going to use and how I'm going to pair it up with liners. So you have this guy right here. This, of course, is one of my unique ones to where it actually has exposed carbon fiber. The liners are carbon fiber. And then we have that nice green wood on there. Just, dude, that stuff looks beautiful. I love it. So when it comes to how you're thinking through, there's going to be times when you're just going to use liners because you want that punch of color. You want that, I say the easiest way to think about if you're going to do a liner. If someone's wanting like a sports team, or they have a favorite color, or they have that design choice where they're like, hey, I want it to be something around here like your Longhorns or your A&M, you know, or something like a hockey team or something like that. And they want those colors in it. The easiest way to add that color in is with your pen material and your liners. So you can easily add the pen color and your liner color and get to that actual, you know, color combo without it having to be the scales that make up the color combo. Because you might want to use something that's more natural wood for that particular style. You might want to use something that's synthetic, however it may be, but you just get the punch of color in the design phase of it. For me, I knew that I wanted people to actually see that this had carbon fiber, because typically when you do carbon fiber liners, you can't see anything about it. You look at the spine of this, you cannot tell that's carbon fiber. It just looks like black liners. That's the reason why I left it exposed, so that you could actually see that, because I wanted something that was a little bit different. And I had never seen anybody do this on a knife, and I've shown it to a lot of knife makers and none of them have seen anybody do it, so I wanted to do something new. But whenever you're thinking through liners, you can do something like carbon fiber. That was just this carbon fiber material right here. That's what I used to do that one. You can do things like micarta G10. You can use vulcanized paper. So this is just vulcanized paper liners. You can get them in a lot of different colors. The difference between the vulcanized paper and G10 and micarta is the G10 is going to stay as bright as it is. The vulcanized paper can kind of be more satin finished, and it won't be as bright colored as something like a G10 liner. Me personally, I like G10 liners. They stand out, they're really striking, and it's a really easy material to use when it comes to liner material. So I like that. Now, one of the things that would kind of not make sense, I'm going to try and move this a little bit so that this ridiculous bright light right here isn't blinding y'all. So whenever I'm thinking through liner choices and things like that, sometimes I will go against what some people say and not do a liner, because it will detract from the design. It won't add anything to it. So if I'm doing something that has a really cool brute to forge finish, it's going to have a certain finish on it, whether it be just an etch on it, or something to where I do like these finishes right here where it's sanded, but then it has a vinegar etch on it, because that's what that is right there. That's a vinegar etch that makes it look so satin and just nice, clean. Or something like this where it's, again, just a slight etch to it. I'm not going to do something that's super bright to things like that. I think it actually takes away from it. And sometimes I don't want to do a liner because I want to do these beautiful blocks like this. If I cut those down into scales, I take this beautiful color and everything, and then I go and I put a bright yellow liner on that. All that yellow is going to do is take away from how beautiful that wood is. Or let's say maybe I'll do white or black. That might work, but again, that's going to draw your eye away from how cool this is. So it's not necessary. Now, if you're going to use something that's monotoned, so let's say we're going to use something like this right here, even though this is absolutely beautiful. The banding on that is just gorgeous. So something like this, you could do a blue liner, or you could do a white liner, or you could do all kinds of different stuff, and that would stand out. It wouldn't be too much for this particular piece because there's not a whole lot going on this, compared to, again, something like this right here that has all the color and pop that you need, you don't need a liner with this. This adds a bunch of color, stands out, gets a little boost, doesn't detract. This one does. This one takes style away from the wood. If you were to put a liner on that, it just wouldn't add anything to the handle. And that's what you're trying to do whenever you're adding liners, is you're trying to add that punch of character and style to it. So not every knife needs a liner. Not every, I mean, it really depends on your wood and things like that. Let's look at a couple of these comments real quick. This for the Buckeye colors, yeah. Customer requests black, red, and green for the handle. I gave him what he wanted. So I look at his pictures. Hey, I get that. Trust me. Yeah, I wouldn't put those color combos in a handle. Wood carving, believe having handy around your shop. Yes. So I actually have knives that I've made for wood carving, and I'm going to talk about that here in just a minute, because Otis here, one of the guys that does the podcast, the Knives Templars podcast that we do, I'm going to be hitting on something that he talked about on the phone before I actually hopped on this live stream. He called me up and we talked about a couple of things to talk about in this particular live stream. So I'm going to talk about that and hit on that here in just a minute. Thank you for bringing that up, John. So when it comes to liners, again, it just kind of needs to make sense within that particular build. There's another thing that a lot of people don't think about, and that's your pin choice, okay? So we're going through. We decided yes liner, no liner, however it may be. You're going to have a whole lot of pin material choices for punches of color. There's a lot of people that use the mosaic pins, and those make sense for particular builds and add a really cool flair to different knives. Love those pins. You're also going to have times where you're picking something like this Tiffany blue, white, black, this micarta pin right here, copper. You can do stainless steel. You're going to have lanyard tubes, all that. I'm going to talk about this one here in just a second and why you would never want to use this. But you've got a lot of pin materials you can choose to add a punch of color that don't mean you need to use a liner. So let's say you want just a little pop of something, just put it in your pin material. You don't technically need to put a liner on something. And again, a lot of people who just get into knife making, they're going to use liners, they're going to use different types of pins, all that type of stuff, because a lot of the knife makers that you watch on YouTube, a lot of the knife makers that you see, they might use liners for a lot of their I want to say bulk knives or something like that, but they'll use a lot of liners to add different colors and things like that. But you see it and you go, I want to try it out, I want to do it. That's cool. Use the heck out of liners if you like liners. But once you get into it, you're going to start, again, collecting these really cool woods that make it to where you don't necessarily need liners on every single thing. What's up, Jeff? By the way, Jeff, you can see that his little icon's a little different if you're looking in the chat. That's one of my members right there. He actually joined as a member in the member section of this. He's one of the guys that's doing that. Like, he might as well be one of my Patreon people, but he's like the one. Thank you, Jeff. So let's see here. Rarely use liners. Again, same thing. I used them a lot whenever I first started making knives. I don't use them hardly ever now. What I do use whenever I'm trying to add a punch of color is pin material. I have got an absolute ton of pin material that it's all kinds of different tones, colors, lanyard tubes. I've got them in different types. I've got copper, brass, stainless. I've got micarta, G10, all lanyard tubes and all those different materials, and I use them for punches of color and different things like that. The ones that I will never use, this right here. You're thinking it's just a black pin. Okay. This is a black, it's fiberglass, okay? So I bought this, I've actually bought like 10 of them at the Blade show in Atlanta, thinking, okay, cool, I need black pins. If you're gonna buy black pins, buy black G10 pins and just call it done. If you're gonna get a black pin, it's black G10. You don't need black carbon fiber. You don't need black micarta, even though I've had black micarta and it works just fine too. Black G10, make your life easy. This fiberglass, if you get this hot once, it will burn like you lit it on fire. It will burn and it will turn brown. It will discolor. It will never polish right. Do not buy these fiberglass style pins. Make sure you buy something that's G10 or micarta, something like that. Do not buy these. I will never use those. I've got a whole bunch of them. I won't even give them to anybody. I might as well throw them in the trash. So I used to use liners when I was insecure about scale fit up. That's accurate. Not sure if I made a difference. But okay, so yes, liners do help hide things like that. They're like a buffer zone for your scales not being super flat or your handle or your tang not being super flat. So yes, they do act as a buffer and they definitely do that. What's up, what's up? So when it comes down to it, as you elevate your knife making, you're probably going to start going away from liners unless it's for a particular build or a custom order or something like that. If I were you, I would collect all the wood. All the wood. Just collect all the wood. I'm going to show y'all something. Let's see if I can grab this up. Have multiple styles of everything. This isn't even a tenth of the different styles that I have. And these are a lot of different things. There's like Carillion maple. That's there's a lot going on with that particular handle material. But when it boils down to it, get everything. Get all the different types of woods because a lot of different builds are gonna stand out depending on the wood that you use and things like that. I like a lot of funky colors, but I also like things that are just natural wood tones with just a little extra flair. That's what this one was right here. I told Oleg that I wanted something that was natural but had a little extra flair. And if you didn't know this, Oleg, he's the guy that a lot of us YouTubers get our wood from. It's knifewood.com. He lives over in Russia, but he has an actual place that's based out of the North in America here. So it takes like nothing for him to ship it to you. The cool thing about Oleg, if you have a particular color of wood that you're looking for, you can actually talk to him on Facebook and be like, hey, I'm looking for something like this, and he'll just make it for you, or he'll send you something that's very similar to that. So that's really cool. He sends me pretty much all of my wood, other than the stuff that I get at blade shows. Now, one of the things that I want to talk about, there's going to be times whenever you actually transition from wood into antler. Whenever it comes time to put antler on a knife, one of the things that you want to do is try and design the knife around being able to leave a lot of that texture. Okay? So if you're going to use a particular piece of antler, take that antler and try and design the knife around the antler. Don't try and design the antler around the knife. Because what you'll end up doing is you'll remove all that texture that makes it really stand out as antler, and you don't want to do that. So if you're going to be doing that, that's one of the materials that's a little bit different, because a lot of these woods, you can carve them down, sand them down, shape them into whatever you want, and the color is going to go all the way through it, and it's going to look really cool. But when it comes to antler, design the blade around the piece of antler. If the antler doesn't fit the blade you're working on, use a different material. Okay? Just don't use the antler on that particular build. Make another knife. Because you want all that stuff to work within the actual build and not be just weird looking, or a piece of antler that has no soul and no texture. So think about that when you're going to design it. Make sure you're paying attention to the actual texture and grain on the antler and all that. The cool thing that they're doing nowadays at Blade Show is there's a few different makers that have antler material where they'll actually go through and they reprofile the antler, which means they actually like stabilize the antler, and then they go in and they sand it down, and then retexture it by hand, and then they dye it again. So it actually, the antler that you're seeing, and you're going, why is this piece of antler $220? It's because, and how is it the perfect handle profile? Because that antler was technically not the perfect handle profile. They stabilized that piece of antler, shaved off everything that didn't make sense, and then retextured it, and then re-dyed it so that it looked like natural antler like that. And it just fits a handle perfectly because they just made it to where it fit a handle perfectly. And that's why they charge like $220 for it. Almost every antler I've got, be real with you, PetSmart, Petco, almost every antler that I've used on my knives have came from there. So, yeah. I see more makers use leather dye to stain the white part and go around on texture. Exactly. Yes, a lot of people will do that and mess with the texture and do that. How to seal, the cool thing about antler is a lot of the antler that you're going to use is dried antler. It's not, you don't really have to worry about sealing it that much. You can do the same thing that you would do with wood. You can seal it with your tongue oil, with your bull linseed oil, things like that. Or you can do a CA glue and actually do that and put basically a case on it. That's why I don't like antler and the smell. Yeah, let's just be real here. If you're working with antler, it smells like you're just chewing on fingernails and toenails. Yeah, that's the way it smells. It is just that. So I used ash and cherry, glued it up, used G10 liners, and when I was sanding and shaping, the two wood separated. What was the cause? Exactly what Philip just said. That right there is too much heat whenever you're doing it. You either got the scales too hot and they wanted to start warping because you started messing with the, well, basically what they stabilized it with, or you released the glue because the glue got, well, gooey and not hard. You got to be careful whenever you're going through and you're shaping and profiling because it can get too hot. Things that I have to worry about is like my shop. Whenever I'm not in here and I don't have the fan on and all that stuff, this shop can get up to 140 degrees. And if I have knife builds in here that are drying or that are just sitting in here, if it gets too hot in here, it can start messing with glues and epoxies and things like that. So you got to be careful with a lot of different things. But yeah, whenever you're profiling, if you heat it up too much, it will go ahead and actually separate that epoxy because you are overheating it. So something to think about there. Now, what's up, Don? How you doing? Oh yeah. Again, Don, another person from the Knives Temp podcast. So something to think about. Definitely listen to podcasts. We're filming or recording another one tomorrow night that'll be released next week. But we talk about a lot of stuff during that podcast, and y'all would absolutely love it. You know, it's a bunch of people like me that talk and shoot the shit about all the different stuff that we talk about as knife makers. It's a great podcast. If you're not listening to it, listen to it. So let's get into a couple of other handle materials. Some stuff that I really want to mess with is this right here. This is a big old thing of micarta, man. This is just beautiful. So this is Westinghouse Canvas micarta. So Westinghouse Canvas. This was sent to me by Kyle Daly, KH Daily Knives. If you haven't looked at any of his stuff, he's the guy that teaches you how to do really good file work on your spines. He's got a really good book. I'll show y'all something. He's got these cool things right here that show you the actual steps with filing spines, like what you do from step 1 to step 3 or step 4 or step 2. Shows you that, and he's got a cool little book that shows you all of the different steps, how to measure it, what to do whenever you're actually going through and getting everything set up, how to set up your files, what files to use. Cool things like this right here, what they're actually called. So that book right there, this is awesome. I actually paid for this book. He didn't just give that to me. I thought, man, I'm going to be doing a lot of file work on a few knives that I have coming up, and I really wanted that, and I wanted to support another fellow maker. If you don't know, he also has a podcast, and he is one of the members of our podcast, comes on, helps host things like that. So Kyle Daly, Cage Daily Knives. There's a lot of cool stuff that he makes that make really good things for you knife makers out there. So if you're not thinking about it, you need to go to his website. Pull little sanding sticks they're rounded and flat on one side. If you're doing hollow grinds, he's actually got sanders built for the size of your wheel. 10-inch wheel, 12-inch wheel. He's got a bunch of different ones that you can actually use. Yeah, definitely hit him up. None of that stuff's expensive. You know, really good prices and all that, but it makes it to where when you're sanding hollow grinds, it's really easy. That right there is a maker who thinks through what makes our lives easier as knife makers. So, we've talked about some handle materials. I will tell you this, if you're going to try and start using some of this material right here, which is going to be, some of them call it jig bone or different types of bones. If you were ever questioning something that warps or were worried about something warping, you get this stuff too hot, absolutely warps. You'll turn that bad boy into a banana. So be mindful of stuff like this. You can get these off of like Etsy, you can get them off of Amazon, different things like that. But this right here, you use this bone material that's stabilized. The moment that you get it too hot, it's going to start warping. You can always warm it back up in a pot of warm water or boiling water, or in an oven at a really low temp, and just press them back down together and they'll straighten back out as long as you let them cool. So you can do a lot of different things and stuff like that. There's some people who want to reprofile their or reshape their antler material, and they will boil it, put it into the shape that they want, and then let it dry, and it will stay that shape. Pretty cool. Straightening hammer from Kyle. Yes. Those straightening hammers with the carbide ball in them, those right there are a game changer. So the first person who ever actually told me about sitting there and hammering with a ball peen hammer to straighten a blade after heat treat was actually Otis Serpento, one of the guys from the podcast. And he was talking about it and how to actually use it. This was like a year ago. And I tried that out and it works amazingly. So being able to sit there and actually hammer on the steel. If you watched my, I think it was the last day video where I was at Blade Show Atlanta, there's a guy named Josh on there. I think it's Josh Howard. He also makes those. He did a demonstration in that video showing you how you would straighten the blade post heat treat and being able to use that hammer, and you didn't have to put it in a vise or risk cracking it or anything like that. So it's something to look into. It's awesome. So one last knife in here, and then I'm going to talk about a few other things. Out of all the knives that I've made that have had liners, this is my favorite one. So when it comes to things that you can do with liners, this is copper liner right there. Easily one of my favorite blades that I've ever done that has a liner, and that was one where I did the exposed copper and then textured it. That right there, easily my favorite liner having knife that I've ever made. So you can do a lot of things with liners. I've actually taken and made handle scales with liners, so you don't always have to use them as a liner. Sometimes you can do, let's just say 1/8 inch carbon fiber liner, 1/8 inch carbon fiber, and then when you profile the handle, what you end up with is a line all the way around the handle, but that's built into the scales, not the actual, you know, next to the blade. You'll end up with a line almost like it's a Tron design, and that looks really cool. And that's using a liner in your handle construction so that it adds a punch of color, but it's not something that's touching your blade. It's actually not touching the tang. I've got videos on that. You can check those out. They look really cool. I've done them with copper. I've done them with regular liner material, all kinds of different things, and they add a cool little, you know, fun color to something without it being actually on the tang. Let's see what we got here. Do you find it more cost effective to buy antler at the pet store rather than knife supply? So, yes, because I've bought way more antler from pet stores than I have from knife stores. Now, I have bought antler from Jantz. I've bought it from, typically whenever I buy antler from actual knife companies, it's at blade shows. I'm there, I can look at it, hold it in my hand. That's when I'll buy it from them. I can go to a pet store and hold the handle material in my hand and see if I like that. So I can hold the antler, see if I like it as a handle, and then if I do, I'll buy that. Because typically you can get those pieces for between $20 and $30. And $20 to $30 for a piece of antler that works for a handle, absolutely worth it. Absolutely worth it. And then again, I design my build based on the handle. I don't make the handle fit the knife profile. I make the knife profile fit the handle when it comes to using antler. Something to think about there. Again, if you're going to do that, make sure you do that. The blue and copper, beautiful. Yes, that's one of my favorite ones that I've ever done. Absolutely love it. So now, when it comes to other things that you could do with handle material, and then I'm going to get into some like proportions and things like that. One of the things that I do, I keep every cutoff that is size worthy for everything. I keep tons of cutoffs. You can use these for so many different things. So pretty much anything that I cut off that is like worthy of being able to use somewhere else on some other build, I will keep those. This is a really old piece of hickory right here. I will take those and I'll make a handle with it later. That's what I did with this one right here. I had this cut off and I was like, I like that punch of color. I think it's going to make sense. So I added that into there. This was just a cut off from another handle that I did. So keep those pieces so that you can make another handle with them later. Don't just chunk your wood. Keep your wood. It's important, and you can make all kinds of stuff with it later. So I do that. This is just one of the boxes that has handle material. I've got another one back here that has a ton of those offs, and then I've got like two more inside the other shop. You keep all that material because you can make a handle with it later. So that is the materials. One of the things that you want to think about, if you're going to use a specific material, you need to figure out whether it needs to be stabilized or it doesn't need to be stabilized. If it has been stabilized, how to finish it. So if you're going to use wood that somebody cut from their tree in their backyard, make sure that wood, or make sure to see if that wood needs to be stabilized or not. Don't just put it on your knife. Something to think about, woods that haven't been stabilized tend to expand and contract on heat and humidity. So if it gets wet, if it's a lot of moisture, if it's really, really hot, it's really, really dry, woods can expand and contract. So what ends up happening is, after you get done profiling a non-stabilized wood that really needs to be stabilized, is you'll find out that your pins end up becoming a little proud because your wood is either shrunk or expanded, so that either your pins are sticking out or they're recessed. You'll also find that your spine or your tang all the way around is either recessed or bumped up because your handle material decided to just change. So if you're going to use materials that need to be stabilized, make sure you get them stabilized before you put them on a knife, because just like a bad handle profile will make someone not want to use your knife, random hot spots from your pin material or the fact that that piece of wood expanded or contracted and put little hot spots around the whole entire tang, those will make people not use your knife as well. And the whole point behind making a really good knife is for it to be used for as long as possible. So you got to think through your material. You can't just pick any piece of wood, put it on a knife, and just assume that it's going to work. It needs to be something that is ready to go on a knife and that will last a very, very, very long time. So if you're going to use a particular material, you need to make sure that it is either stabilized or that it's a type of wood that does not need to be stabilized. Do your research. Google's an awesome tool. Let's see what we got here. I know it's off the wall question, but if you heat quench a blade and then it get it hardened, right? Can you requench? Yes, yeah, you can absolutely requench. So you don't want to do that a whole lot because it adds a lot of stress to the blade. But let's say you heat treated it, it didn't get hard enough, and you just needed to do a little bit better heat treat. Yeah, go ahead, heat it back up, quench it again. You'll be perfectly fine. But the more times you do that, the more chances you're going to have cracking the blade and just actually messing with the grain structure. So just be mindful of that other things can happen because of it. Better late than never. We managed to catch a stream. What's up, Chris? Awesome, awesome, awesome. Chris over here. By the way, Chris is the reason why this blade happened. So awesome. Plus, he's also the reason why one of the chef's knives that I did, because I used the steel that he sent me, and the one that had the chef's knife with the Tasmanian myrtle. He's the one that sent me the steel for that and the Tasmanian myrtle. So really cool there. Jason, I was hoping to get started in knife making. Any advice on what I need to do or what you need and don't need? I'll get into that towards the end of this live stream. So make sure you hang out. We only got a little bit longer. Okay, so we've talked about stabilized materials. You're going to have different things like this right here is very, very, very old bog oak. This doesn't need anything done to it. This was actually given to me by Matt Rich, so you see him in the comment section. But things like bog oak and certain materials, you don't really need to do certain things with it. They're pretty much good to go. A lot of people use whinge. A lot of people use paduk, however you want to say it, material that looks like this right here. And a lot of these do not come stabilized. Whinge doesn't come stabilized. This doesn't come stabilized. That's when you're going to start using your tongue oils or your boiled linseed oils or different things like that to really, really, saturate those particular materials and make sure they're good for a really long time. Those materials tend to be really oily, and they'll actually do their process for you. Come on. Here in Australia. What's up, Scott? I've had a few people from Australia. That's pretty cool. Love, y'all have an awesome knife making community there. Wood from your own yard? No, I wouldn't use, I say that, I've got stabilized pecan wood, I've got stabilized mesquite, I've got stabilized things like that, so you'll have these beautiful things like this right here. This is sweet gum that's been stabilized. Some of these woods from around here look absolutely beautiful when they've been stabilized. The grain structure is just really cool and kind of erratic. So do I use some of those? Yes, if I have them stabilized with the right process that they use to stabilize them. Because of where I'm at, I've got some of those trees that just look really cool when they're stabilized. But would I cut something off one of my branches and use it? No, I wouldn't. Not from anything that I have directly in my backyard. But yes, I've got materials from people's backyards. As long as they were stabilized and they went through the right process to make sure they were good, yes. One of the pieces, this piece right here, this is a piece of hickory that I actually redid a hand saw from my father-in-law, and this was a nice piece of hickory. This right here, not stabilized, but I'll show y'all something. Let's just take this little big guy. That right there, that's hard. And that's just from its age, how long it's dried and everything like that. This stuff right here, that is amazing. And it made a really good handle on there. Now I still ended up doing boiled linseed oil on it, but it's just thinking through. Remember, Google is your best friend when it comes to a lot of that. There's a lot of forums on handle materials and what you need to do to make them awesome for handles for knife making. Now, one of the things that I want to get into is proportions. So whenever you're trying to design your blade and handle all together, you'll see a lot of these. I've designed a lot of knives. This is like a 50th of the knives that I've designed. But what I like to focus on whenever I'm designing a knife is the actual overall profile of it. So whenever you see a knife that I make, the handle's typically going to make sense to the size of the knife. The only time that a handle and the blade need to be kind of different are for specific builds. So one of the things that I see some newer knife makers do is they'll put a really fat handle on a knife that has a kind of tiny blade. Now, if you're making some carving knives, some of those are going to have bigger handles and smaller blades because they're for specific types of, use. You're just going to make them differently. But typically, whenever I make a knife, I'm going to make it to where it fits like a knife handle. I'm going to make it to where it fits my ricasso well, but I'm going to make sure that I have a nice area for my finger to stop. You'll see some people make a blade like this, but they'll go ahead and make the handle almost the same size as this area right here, and you end up with this really big bulky handle that doesn't make much sense for that particular style of knife. If you're going to make a big handle, put it on a big knife. That is a big handle. That is a big knife. It's going to make sense. If I put this handle on this knife, that wouldn't make any sense. Now, you just want to think about it because handle profile proportions make someone want to, again, use or not use your knife. If you take and you put a broom handle on a really cool blade that doesn't index right, a lot of my knives, whenever I'm thinking about how I'm going to design them, you'll probably heard me say it 50 billion times. A blade and a knife together that needs to be able to index, whether you are blind or not blind, you should be able to pick this knife up, grab it, and go, okay, that's the cutting edge, I'm good to go. That's what you want to be able to do whenever you are trying to design your knife and everything like that. It's not just designing it like this. If you go to blade shows, some people actually put their sketches on the actual table of how they design their knives. You design it this way and this way, so that you can actually go through, grab it, and it's going to index right. Your hand doesn't just create a little circle, it creates kind of an oval whenever you pinch your index finger into this little area. So you want to be able to grab it, and that knows that your blade is going to be right there, so you can grab it, cut it. You don't want that to be comfortable. That doesn't need to be comfortable. That doesn't need to be comfortable. That needs to be comfortable. So when you're cutting into it and you're using it, it makes sense. Grab the knife, automatically fits like that. Grab the knife, automatically fits like that. Grab the knife, automatically fits like that. Doesn't matter what it is. If you're also designing your handle for different types of applications, if it's a chef's knife, you need to make sure that the heel here is far enough down. So you need this ricasso area to be tall enough so when you put your handle on it and you grab it, whether you're grabbing it like this or you're grabbing it like this, you want to make sure you get your knuckles off the ground. Now, it's a little bit easier on a chef's knife because you're typically going to be pinch gripping it and doing your thing. But you'll see a lot of chef's knives, they're a little bit taller in the heel right here because you need to be able to grab it, whether you're chopping or doing different things to it. You're just trying to bring the handle up and away, and that's just something you want to think about whenever you're designing your profile. You want to make sure that your handle is small enough for the type of knife that you're going to make. If you're going to make a little EDC that is only like 8-inch overall length, you need to make sure that the handle thickness, the height, all that makes sense for the actual knife. Again, you're going to make something that's a little bit smaller. All these proportions need to go into the actual knife making whenever you're doing it so that it makes sense to the overall profile and so that it's comfortable, it's easy to use. If you're kind of trying to build up your confidence in, before I get into that, off Amazon, not sure if it's stabilized. It's kind of like hit or miss with Amazon, but typically if you read their stuff, sometimes they'll tell you whether it's stabilized or not. You just got to kind of hope and trust and go down in the like reviews and see if people have actually had good time with theirs. Lovelace said knife should feel like a natural extension of your arm. Absolutely needs to. So when it comes into the sizing and everything like that, you're holding it, you want to make sure that everything fits right. You want it to be right profile, right size, fit in your hand exactly how it is. Whenever you're going through, if you're designing a knife that is gonna be uncomfortable, people are not going to use it. I don't know how many times I have to say that, but you'll see some people do what I call the broom handle knives, where you make a knife that's small, and then you take your scales, okay, and you sandwich that steel on there, and then you take and you just knock the edge off this right here, knock the edge off. Of course it'd be smaller, but you knock that edge off. What ends up happening is when you look at your knife handle, so if you were looking at it from the back right here, what ends up happening is you end up with a square with knocked off corners. And if it's a square with knocked off corners, that handle is going to feel the same no matter where you are using it. Okay? Now, if you're doing the crazy test that they do on Forged in Fire, and you take a handle that's like that, and you go and you whack it on something or you chop it with something, what's going to end up happening is you go and you hit it on something, it's going to sometimes hit straight on, or sometimes it's going to do this and hit, and then it's just going to rock just like that, and then this is not useful unless you're trying to fly, swat a fly. You're not going to know which way it's going to go. If I'm doing this and I'm chopping with this, it's always going to index exactly how it is right now. So a lot of that goes into your knife design. What I was going to say a second ago, if you're not confident in how you should design your handle proportions, all you have to do is just go to a store and look up your favorite EDCs. This one's not a very good test because this is not something that would make a lot of sense holding it wise, although this is a very comfortable knife. Normal EDCs that you can get, take those, draw their handle profile. Like if you like the way it feels and it feels really good, take those and copy that handle profile onto your knife if you need to for a little while, and then modify it a little bit. The reason why I have these right here, and those are the ones that I've made wooden templates out of. I've got all the different sizes. I've got my karambit style knives, my ring knives. I've got a bunch of EDCs. I could take these handle profiles, and almost all of them are slightly different, and I will design my blade. So I'll go, okay, here's how I kind of want my blade to be, and then I take one of those, pop it off of there, put it on my template that I'm drawing out, trace that handle profile, and then I just modify it. So do I want to cant the handle down just a little bit? Do I want to change something? Almost every handle that I've done have been based off of these right here. Because I've got 3-finger, I've got this one right here that's like a 2-finger knife. Got some 3-finger ones, I've got full handle ones, EDCs, and I'll take those profiles and I go, okay, I know for a fact that these are comfortable. And that way it puts my fingers in the right place, and it makes it a lot easier for me to make the 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th, 10th knife that I design. So if you're kind of not confident on it, go and buy a knife that you like the handle, the way it feels, and then just design that for a few times. And as you get used to holding your knife and what you're going to do with it, you can just modify it, and you'll be perfectly fine. That's one of the easiest ways to do it. Make a vacuum chamber and use cactus juice for stabilizing your own. I have a lot of friends that stabilize and have the ability to do that, so I probably won't stabilize my own stuff, because some of my friends that do a really good job at stabilizing, I trust their ability and their skill, and it's absolutely worth it because I don't want to mess something up. They already have all those tools and everything like that, so I'm going to let them continue to do that stuff. You can still use unstabilized curly maple. Yes, it won't polish the same way, and it won't be near as water resistant. And the downside to, again, using something like maple non-stabilized is the expansion and contraction depending on heat, humidity, and things like that. So something to think about there. Stabilized woods, if you're going to use a chef's knife or something like that, you want to go with stabilized because it's going to last a lot longer in that particular environment as opposed to something that's not stabilized. So hopefully that's helped a lot of people, but again, whenever you're talking about handle profiling, you just want to make sure that you're making a comfortable knife, because if you make a comfortable knife, someone buys that knife and it's more comfortable than the other knives that they've used, you're the person they're going to go back to buy another knife. And the cool thing about knife making is you can sell the things that you make. So I have a friend, okay? I have a friend that also has a YouTube channel. His name's Keegan. He's actually the reason why I started my YouTube channel. He makes skateboards, custom skateboards, okay? You would think knife making is kind of a niche market. No, him making custom skateboards, it's a niche market. There is not, he can only charge certain amount for them. If you are a knife maker, you can sell your knife confidently for a good amount, okay? So one of the cool things about our art is that there are millions of people out there that want knives. So you make a good knife that's comfortable and has a good heat treat, you can sell that thing and recoup your cost. How many hobbies do we have that we can recoup the cost out of that hobby? My cars, the only reason why I can recoup the cost out of building my cars is because I flip the cars. I buy them at a price, I do my own work to them, and then I sell them at a higher price. I make money off of it. Then I get to buy another cool car. So that works. Knife making is the same way. Okay? Make really cool knives, sell them. You can make money back. Repay yourself for your 2x72 and things like that. And if you're just getting into knife making, the things that you need are very, very simple, and almost everything is on the little bench that's behind the camera here. Pop you off for a second. Boom, 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 boom. All these things right here. Or you can even get one of those little 1x30s that are right there, and you'll be fine. All you really need is a grinder that you can remove material from. I love my portaband saw. My portaband saw is one of my best investments that I've ever made, because for less than a couple $100, I was able to get the portaband saw, the table that it attaches to, and it saved me hundreds of hours worth of time. And it creates way less dust and way less noise than using an angle grinder. And you can kind of get really tied into certain things. You can use that for steel, wood, all kinds of stuff. Portaband saw, drill press. You do not have to get a super expensive drill press. You can get the mediocre one at Harbor Freight that has a nice travel and everything like that. Still just a bench top. Use that bad boy to do all your holes. Drill presses, awesome. I even use mine to help buff things. Put a buffing wheel in there. It's also as a buffer. My 2x72 was one of my favorite investments that I ever did. It's not the best 2x72 in the world, but I'll tell you right now, that thing paid for itself in the first couple of months. You know, there are master smiths that'll tell you whether you got to pull out a loan or sell something, do it, get yourself a 2x72, you will never look back. You will never say, damn, I wish I wouldn't have bought a 2x72. Nope, no one has ever said that. Every person who's had a 2x72 has gone, man, I'm so happy I spent this money. Oh my gosh, I love this thing. It's the best thing ever, because you can use it for things other than knife making. It's absolutely worth it. Those right there, that's what I would call. What's up, Rick? If y'all haven't seen Rick Hall's stuff, he does awesome work too. I've been told I don't charge enough for my knives. Okay, so I'll hit on that too. Be confident in what you make. If you make a good knife that has a good heat treat that you've tested, you've seen good grain structure on a heat treat, that has a good handle, If you make a good knife, be confident in what you charge for it. Don't be afraid to ask what it's worth. A lot of people think, well, I'm going to price myself out of the market. The person who wants your knife is going to pay for that knife. Whether it's $100, $200, $500, $1,000. You'll see some knives whenever you go to Blade Show that are selling for $4,000. And you're going to look at it and go, what? $4,000? Why? And that's just going to happen. So just be confident in what you do. Now, if you've never tested your heat treat, you don't know what your grain structure looks like, you don't know any of that stuff, then you're technically not confident in what you're doing. Okay? So be mindful of the product that you're putting out. You know, don't put out something that's subpar and ask a premium for it. Okay? Because that's not going to help anybody. If you are doing a good knife making process within your heat treat, your handle material choices, your profile, you've actually tested them, you're calling it a camp knife, but you've never batoned it through wood, you've never made feather sticks, you've never had to carve with it, you've never had to whittle anything with it, you've never had to cut rope with it several times, then you're technically not confident in it because you've never used it for that specific task. You're just calling it a camp knife because it's a camp knife profile. So be mindful of stuff like that. I test a lot of my things. I have a blast doing it. And if I'm going to make a camp knife, it's going to be useful as a camp knife. If I make a chef knife, it's going to be useful as a chef knife. And I'm going to charge what's necessary to be charged for it to recoup my material cost and my time. So just be confident in what you're doing. For a G10 or micarta to stabilize wood, never use stabilized wood. That turned out, yeah. So it really depends on who you're using to get your stabilized wood. The people that a lot of us use for our stabilized wood, we're just really confident in it because we've put them through their paces. Harbor Freight makes a portaband stand now. They do make a portaband stand now. I've seen that. What's up, Jason? Yeah. Ooh, I didn't know that it could do vertical and horizontal. That's actually, I'm going to look into that. That's pretty cool that it actually does both vertical and horizontal. If y'all are thinking about getting into one of the portaband saws, look into what Jason just said there because that would be super beneficial. Okay, we're at an hour and 2 minutes. I swear all these live streams are like this. If I could talk to y'all for another hour and a half, I would, because I really enjoy the live streams, being able to talk to y'all, answer these questions, and I think it's absolutely awesome. If y'all want to hear conversations like this, make sure you check out the Knives Templar podcast. I typically have links for it in every description for every video that I put out, and there's a bunch of cool guys just talking about really cool stuff. Be careful, though I cut the snot out of myself on a portaband saw. Yeah, you got to be real careful. So make sure you're using push sticks. Treat your portaband saw just like it is a table saw. Use push sticks, do things like that, because a lot of the times when you're putting a lot of pressure on those materials to shove them through or shove basically the blade through your material, it will typically pop, and you won't realize that it's going to do that. So whenever you're putting that pressure and you finally break through, you can shove a thumb into it, you can shove an index finger into it, go right through your knuckle. Those portaband saw blades will cut through steel, so just be mindful of that. I see that you're saying wear Kevlar gloves, Jason. I've just been told from everybody, shop class and everything, that to not use gloves near anything that moves. Your lathe, your 2x72, your drill press, your portaband saw. If something can pull you into it, don't use gloves near that thing, because it would suck. Where do I get belts for sanding? I get those from a few different things: Phoenix abrasives, Combat abrasives. I get them from Pop's Knife Supply. I get them from a lot of different places. Of course, with the podcast, we're sponsored by a few of those people. I don't really get any percentage off or anything like that. I just trust them. I use VSM blades. Doesn't really matter who sells them. I typically use VSM. I use Norton blades. I do like Combat, and I do like Phoenix. Phoenix, typically, I get their belts faster, and sometimes they're less expensive. But yeah, typically it's just VSM as the actual belts that I'm getting. And then need to stick to a few stills and dial in the heat treat. Most important thing, no way around. Okay, I'm going to end on this. That's a very good point, Philip. Okay? Get yourself a steel. Use that steel. If you're going to work on 1084, work on 1084. If you're going to work on 5160, work on 5160. If you're going to work on any particular steel, just work on that, focus on that, get great at it. Don't be the person who makes 2 knives out of 1 steel, goes to the next 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 steel, because you really have not actually fine-tuned anything. Okay? You need to be able to test the steel that you're using. Just because there are recipes online, that doesn't mean that whenever you're using a just a regular forge, that you're going to get it perfect. If you're using a heat treat oven, it's really easy. Type in your numbers, let it do its thing, quench it, you're pretty much done. But a lot of us knife makers that are on here are using forges to heat treat their steels. So just make sure that you're getting confident with the steel that you're using. Don't use a bunch. A lot of people who are, master smiths will use the same steels for pretty much everything that they do. And it's just the way it goes. They're really confident in those steels. They love the way those steels work within their process, so that's what they use. They'll buy a ton of it and call it done. So be mindful of that. Started at 1095, a year later, 1084, now using Pops 8670. Yep, 8670 is great steel, super easy heat treat. 1095, not that great a heat treat process. It's kind of specific, it's finicky. You can heat treat it, you can get it hardened, but if you want that silky, smooth grain structure, it really does well with a heat treat oven. Okay, guys, let's end it there. Hopefully y'all had a blast. If y'all did, let me know and somewhere. And if you haven't joined, make sure you join the member section. Jeff Jones is a part of that. Okay, make sure you do that. It helps me out. It's just like Patreon, but it's within YouTube, and it helps me continue to do these things out here because it does not pay that well. I do this because I like educating and I like helping out fellow makers get more confident within their abilities and their skill, and that member section really, really helps me. It's underneath every video that I put out. There's a little join button. You just click join on it and you can do that, and it definitely helps out. Guys, that's it for this one. If you would, share the content to people, okay? Y'all have an amazing day. Y'all stay safe out there. I'll catch y'all next time.